the daughter-in-law who's widowed down in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and you live not far from widow.
Yeah, I live right out, well, I'm actually, my address says Poca, but I'm really across lanes.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
right across.
Yeah, Cross Lanes, that's what Kathy was telling. Cross
Yes.
Lanes, that rings a bell.
Yes.
Well, it's nice to meet you. I'm Katie.
You're Katie.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, it's nice meeting you. And I'm gonna sit down and leave
Oh,
you
okay.
alone.
Oh, hey, Katie, could you do me a favor? Could you get a paper clip and put those things together and give that to Linda?
Sure.
Thank you. What about the, PowerPoint?
Do you want to go ahead? Can I just go ahead and turn it on?
Okay, then that's at the end. You need to go to,
Or we can go the other way.
go keep on, there. That's it.
All right.
And then the
So
forward.
that's forward, backward. That blacks it out.
Okay.
If the light turns off, just kind of tap this button over here.
Okay.
And if it stops working completely, we'll figure out
Okay.
something.
Holler.
Yeah.
And this is,
Squeeze that.
okay,
So.
so. We're on now?
Yep. So let's see. All right, this one's on too. It's not as loud as Dean's microphone will be. Good morning, everybody. Good to see everyone here. Those of you who are members from our congregation, thank you for coming out this morning. We'll remind you, I'll go ahead and say, when we have our breaks between Dean's lessons, there's coffee and a couple of treats in the back there, so feel free to continue enjoying those, as some of you already have. But again, thank you for being here. Those who are visiting from the area or even a little further from the area, thank you for making the drive to be with us. And I'll go ahead and say it now so I don't forget to later. If there's ever anything we can do for y'all, please let us know. We are live streaming this too, so if you're watching this online, whether live or later on, thank you for watching. And same offer to you all. If there's a way you can contact us because you need something, please let us know. We would love to assist you in any way possible. So we are here today to host a Widowhood Workshop. And I've tried to make it very plain from the beginning, as Dean makes when he does his ministry all over the nation, that this is not a workshop for widows. It's a workshop for how we can care for widows. So if you are a widow or widower, of course you're welcome, and you will be hearing information that will assist you. But at the same time, if you're not, this is still going to be applicable information as we try to learn better how to serve each other, especially in the model of God and his New Testament. Let me tell you a little bit about Dean. This is where he gets a little worried look in his eyes because he wonders what I'm going to say about him. I met Dean because when I finished preaching school, I moved to northeastern Ohio to work with the Massillon congregation, and he was working on the other side of the county with the Hartville congregation. He worked with the Hartville congregation for, he said, 33 and a third years. He worked there while he was married to his wife, Ruth Ann, and unfortunately she passed away, and then he moved from that job down to Tennessee to work with a congregation in West Tennessee. He's now living in Georgia near one of his 3 daughters. Mm-hmm. He said he has 5 grandkids, and he takes pictures of dogs to show his kids and grandkids that he meets. Unfortunately, last night he could only take a picture of a cat.
Yeah.
But he didn't seem to mind too much. You'll find out more about Dean, but he's a man who he has used his life to serve God, and he has found, of course, a very unique way to do so, as he will inform you with this widowhood ministry that he does. And for those of you from our congregation, we've invited him because we want to use his information to make sure we're reaching out to our community. So we're just eagerly anticipating what you're going to share with us today so we can do so. So that means I need to stop talking. But before I stop talking, I do want to lead us in prayer as we start this morning. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you that we are able to gather here today. We pray that you bless us as we do so. We pray that we will have attentive ears and open minds and open hearts to what is taught so that we can apply it to our lives and be pleasing to you in all that we do. We pray that you help us reach out to our community around us. We know there are people who are hurting, and we pray that we can find them and assist them, and especially help them be pointed to you as we try to point ourselves to you. So we just pray that you give us guidance in all that we do. And it's in your Son's name we say this prayer. Amen.
I add with Jack, good morning. And I also add with Jack a deep sense of appreciation for the fact that you came out this morning. Time is precious, and we have a limited amount of it. And we don't waste time, we invest time. Sometimes we invest time in things that are not really that important, and then we invest time in things that are really important. I hope that when you leave today, you can honestly say, boy, that was a great investment of my time. I really appreciate anybody who comes to a Widowhood Workshop, because I admit the fact that this is an unpopular subject. It's an unpleasant subject. It is not a subject that people like to talk about. As a matter of fact, I have said to some other folks and to some even congregations that selling a church on having a Widowhood Workshop is like selling a cemetery lot to a millennial. It's really hard because you just don't see the need. I understand that because I used to be in that number. Not no more, forgive my English. Now I know a little bit more by experience, sadly. So I really appreciate the fact that you, despite the fact that this is not, a super positive kind of a topic, that you still were willing to expose yourself to this. And I hope it really is a good investment of your time. Now, because it is such a challenging topic to think about, one of the things that I try to do in all Widowhood Workshops is make sure that we remember what Proverbs 17 says. A cheerful heart is good medicine. We may lose a lot of things in life. One thing we need to really make sure we don't lose is our sense of humor, because life can be really hard. And if we lose our sense of humor, in addition to a lot of these difficult things that we lose in our life, we're going to be even in more difficult straits. So let me start out this session with a little bit of levity. I want you to relax. I want you to think out loud together with me, especially here in this first session. I want you to have a comfort zone right here for the next several minutes. Let me share with you this particular post I saw on Facebook. The bad news is I accidentally took the wrong medication this morning. The good news is I'm protected from heartworms and fleas for the next 3 months. Did you take your medicine this morning? Did you take the right medicine this morning? I love this prayer here. So far today, God, I've done all right. I haven't gossiped. I haven't lost my temper. I haven't been greedy, grumpy, nasty, selfish, or overindulgent. I'm very thankful for that. But in a few minutes, God, I'm fixing to get up out of bed. And from then on, I'm going to need a lot of help. Amen. Oh, it is good to enjoy some levity in your life. What would we be if we had to experience all seriousness all the time? Well, I want to introduce this Widowhood Workshop with a discussion, what I call a discussion of life, love, and loss. You're going to be seeing a few videos, and I'm going to ask you to be engaged. I'm going to ask you to share some thoughts. I want you to consider this a time that we think out loud together. That's what we're going to do. So I need you to be thinking, and I need you to be willing to express yourself orally here for a little bit. What happened? Let's talk about life. Isn't that a beautiful baby? Sometimes I hear people say, when they see a baby, especially if it's in their family, that what a beautiful baby. Well, I've never seen an ugly one, really. They're all just beautiful. Now, some of us lose our beauty pretty quickly, especially on the male gender side. But these beautiful babies are born into this world. And I want you to think about life in this world. I want you to give me a word or a phrase that describes life in this world. Any word or phrase that pops into your mind that you associate with life in this world. Anybody? Trying. Well, it sure is. There are trials. What else? Give me another word or phrase. Oof. Good. Yeah, it can be that way. Sometimes your reaction to life experience is oof. How about another one? Fleeting. Okay. I saw a post on Facebook this morning I thought was cute. This lady posted about the weekend, and she was talking very positively about the weekend, but she said the problem with the weekend is it's going to end in about 30 minutes. And that's the way it seems. You know, the weekend passes by so fast. And boy, that's true about life. Life is fleeting. It's amazing how quickly that time passes. Give me another word or phrase that you would use to associate with life. In a group this large, we ought to at least be able to do a half a dozen. We've got a couple now. Exciting. Boy, it is, isn't it? Life is so exciting. Especially when you get married. Isn't that such a neat experience? I mean, it's great to go to weddings. It's especially good for those of us men who married off daughters to go and realize that we're not having to pay for this one. I have 3 daughters, by the way. But it can be so exciting. Life can be so exciting when a new baby is born. You know, it's so exciting when you're able to maybe finally secure what you call your dream job, or you're able to move into what you want to consider your long-term home. You know, the place that you want to go to heaven from. It's exciting. That's a great word. How about another word that you'd use? A word or a phrase? Roller coaster. Okay. Boy, that's a good one. Because that recognizes the reality that there are some really high highs, aren't there? But there are also some very low lows. And you think about these beautiful, innocent little children, and you think about what they're going to go through in their life. Lord only knows how fast the roller coaster is going to be, how deep the dives are going to be, you know, how high the ecstasy is going to be. It's incredible to think about that. And you know, it's probably a good thing we don't know about a lot of things on our roller coaster ride. I'm not so sure that would be a good thing to know about everything before we experience it. Pardon me? You wouldn't get on. Yeah, you wouldn't get on. As a matter of fact, I have a sermon I preach. I love to preach this sermon. It's called, Did You Know What You Did When You Did It? About when you said, I do. Did you really know what you were doing when you did it? When you said those 2 words, I do? Oh my. And if you did, you might have some second thoughts. You might choose not to. Yeah, that is so true. You know, in life, we can go through some really difficult times with a tremendous amount of stress and strain. And that can do a number on us. As a matter of fact, there's a passage in the book of Job that I'm going to make it a point of not quoting. I'm going to make it a point of reading it. So you can maybe think about this in a different way than you have in the past and actually hear it word for word just the way he said it. Now, I'm sure many of you are acquainted with the story of Job. You know, here was a tremendously blessed man, super prosperous. He was at a high point on the roller coaster. I mean, it was just, life was great. Life was really, really great. But then life became not so great. It became awful. He lost his 10 children. He lost all of his livestock. He was reduced to abject poverty. He lost the support of his wife. He lost his health. And he has these 3 friends that come to him at his troubled time, and they didn't even he didn't even look like the same person. I mean, that's the number that life can do to you. And they struggled. They all struggled in this conversation in the book of Job about his life and about what was going on in his life. At one point, here's what Job says in Job 14, verse 1. Now listen real carefully to what Job is saying. Man who is born of woman is of few days and full of trouble. Now, what do you think about what Job said there? Was that right? Let me ask you to do it this way. Think about it this way. Man that is born of woman. Now, did he get that right? Do you know of any other way to get into this life than to be born of a woman? Man who is born of woman, that's definitely right, is of few days. Is that right? Man that is born of woman is of few days. Is that part right? I was in Alachua, Florida last weekend and preached at the Alachua Church of Christ, just north of Gainesville, Florida. And there I met Miss Catherine. Miss Catherine is, I found out, she was introduced to me by her son-in-law, who's an elder there. And the son-in-law said, this is my mother-in-law. Her name is Catherine, and she's 101 years old. She said, I'm 101 and a third years old. She corrected him. I guess after you reach 100, you then count the fractions as you go along. Amazing lady. Still going to church. Used a walker. 101 and a third years old. Now, wait a minute. Job said, man that is born of woman is a few days. Is that a few days? 101 and a third years. Was Job right about that? In what sense is life here a few days? Compared to eternity. I was in Jackson, Tennessee on Van Drive one day, and I was listening to this preacher preach. I don't know what church he was from, but it kind of caught my attention, so I listened to him preach for a while. He made this observation about wisdom. I'd never heard this before, and I thought, I wished I would have heard this decades ago. He defined wisdom this way. He said, wisdom is when you see something the way God sees it. When you see marriage and family the way God does, you've got wisdom about that subject. When you see financial management of your resources the way God sees it, you have wisdom about money management. When you see life the way God sees it, you have wisdom. When you see time the way God sees it, you have wisdom. What is 101 and a third years when you lay it alongside eternity? It's a very brief time, isn't it? Like the drop in the bucket. You know, like the snap of a finger, the blink of an eye. Job was right. There's only one way to get into this world. A man that is born of woman is a few days. Now, look at that last phrase. What did he say in that last phrase? Man that is born of woman is a few days and what? Full of trouble. There's a footnote in my Bible in the New King James Version that says turmoil, full of turmoil, full of trouble. Now, is that part right? Oh, it can be, or it can feel like that at times. I want you to look at something. This graphic here. When you look at that graphic, What do you learn from that picture? What perception do you see when you look at that graphic?
Our blessings outweigh our burdens
Why do you say that, Andrew?
because that's what the scale says.
Okay, because that's what the scale said. That's his view when he looks at that. You've got that teeter-totter look there, or appearance. And then you've got on the one side the blessings and the burdens. We have both, right, in this life? We have both. But then you've got the blessings apparently weighing down the burdens. Now, is that what Job said? Is that what Job said in Job 14, verse 1? What was Job's perception? If I have a 16-ounce glass and it has 16 ounces of water in it, that glass is full, right? What else can you put in it? Okay. He said, man that is born of woman is a few days and full of trouble. Was that right? Is that accurate? I think you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned about, well, at least that's how he felt. And I think that's true. Hyperbole. That's when, in English class, if you were awake that day, the English teacher talks about hyperbole. That's when you kind of stretch things, kind of exaggerate. It's a thing that we do sometimes unintentionally when we're very cranked up emotionally. Like, for instance, when you really get mad at one of your kids or maybe your spouse or a neighbor or something, you might say something like this: you always do that. Well, always that's a universal term. Or, in talking about your kids, you say, you never clean your room. Well, again, that's another universal term. That's hyperbole. What you're doing is you're really stretching the truth. And the reason why you're compelled to do that is because you're very emotional. When you're very angry or you're very upset, we have a tendency to kind of stretch things. Now, what had Job experienced that would prompt him to stretch things? Oh, yeah, a series of crushing losses. Do you know anybody? If you've read the first couple of chapters, and that's usually about the best people do is the first 3 chapters, I would encourage you not to stop at the end of chapter 3. There's a lot of good stuff from chapter 3 to chapter 42 in that book. Very thought-provoking discussion there with Job and his 3 friends. He had gone through crushing losses. I mean, boy, he was, do you know of anybody, if you've read those first couple of chapters especially, have you ever met anybody in this world who has suffered to the degree that he suffered? I mean, it was all, I've talked to people who have lost their children. As a matter of fact, just recently, June Franks Brooke is her name. Her husband is the one who started the Magnolia Messenger, which is a brotherhood periodical that's been circulated for over 40 years. Miss June lost her husband, and most recently, she lost a second son. She'd already lost her husband and 1 son. Now she's lost 2 of her 3 sons. Life can be so difficult. I mean, so heartbreaking. You can't help but be emotional about it. And it does a number on you. It does a number on you the way you feel, and how you feel has an impact on how you think. And I understand why Job said what he said. But what he said in that last phrase is not literally true. It is not literally true. Because in his life, have you ever thought about this? In Job's life, and I would really encourage you maybe this afternoon, I think it's refreshing to read about his struggles, because I think his struggles are really, they're heartbreaking, but his story is inspirational. Because though he really struggled, he did not let himself die because he had lost so much in his life. He had experienced so much loss. He didn't let himself die because his 10 children died. He chose to live. It was a hard life for a good while, but he chose to live. He was bound and determined to do that. He had a God in heaven who loved him. Is that a blessing? Is there a bigger, better blessing than a Father in heaven who loves you? He had a Father in heaven who knew about his life. Now, sometimes people know about the heartaches of other people, but they don't do anything responsibly. He had a Father in heaven who loved him, who knew about his circumstances, and was actively, providentially working in his life. The only thing Satan ever did to Job in attacking him was what the Lord let Satan do. That book in the book of Job isn't just a book about human suffering. It's a book about the sovereignty of God. God is sovereign. In other words, he is in control. He only let Job experience what he knew that Job could handle with his help, with the help of the Creator in heaven. Did Job have any friends? Do you remember how many friends came to him? Do you remember? 3. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. To this day, I still wonder why in the world a mother would call her children that. But I guess with all the labor and travail you go through as a woman, you have a right to call your kid whatever you want to. Here are these 3 friends who drop everything. You know, a lot of times those friends are attacked in our thinking or our study about the book of Job. And I can understand why that we do that. They are questionable at times in that book, terribly questionable. But I want you to stop and think about those 3 friends. He had people in his life who really cared about him. We know of 3 friends who dropped everything and came to him. What kind of a friend does that? Drops everything and came to him. They were willing to expose themselves to his extreme discomfort. You know how some people say, oh, if you want to tick me off, I'll be real blunt with you. If you want to really upset me, tell me that you won't do something as a Christian. Here you are a Christian, and you tell me that you won't do something because it's out of your comfort zone. If you ever hear somebody say that in my presence, hold me back. Because I want to climb their ladder. That is about as unchristian, anti-Christian as it could be. You know, the cross is a symbol of sacrifice. There was a tremendous sacrifice made so that we could have a relationship with God. God went way out of his comfort zone. Jesus was way out of his comfort zone. Why? Because of compassionate concern for us. God help us if we ever have such a degree of self-interest and selfishness in our life that we would ever think about using that as an excuse to avoid an uncomfortable situation. Out of your comfort zone? Don't ever use that phrase in regard to somebody that you know is hurting. These 3 friends dropped everything. They came to him and exposed themselves to all of that discomfort. Do you remember how long it was they sat with him? 7 days. What did they say during that 7-day period? Nothing. Now, if it would have been 3 females that came to him, it would have been a miracle for them to keep quiet for 7 days. But these 7 men, and men can do that. Men cannot, they can just grunt. They don't have to say a word for 7 days. It can go on for a long time. But here he has these 3 male friends who come to him and they sit with him. What were they doing when they did that? They were ministering to him by their presence. You know what I remember most about my wife's calling hours and funeral? I remember the 400 people that were there during her calling hours that stood in line for a long period of time. I don't remember a single thing any of them said. But I still have that visual in my mind about all of those people all over Stark County and elsewhere who came to express their condolences. And then the 200 people who were there at her funeral the next day. They ministered to him by their presence. Was he blessed with friendship? He sure was. He had a lot of blood. Was he still alive? Did he still have a heart that was beating? Did he still have blood coursing through his veins? I will suggest to you that at his worst, when his life was at the lowest point ever, he was still more blessed than he was burdened. Have you ever thought about that? One of the things we don't do is what we tell ourselves we do when we sing. Count your many blessings, name them one by one. There is no way in the world in this life you can be more burdened than blessed. Now, if you doubt that, what your problem is you think too generically and not specifically. There's a book back there on the table. 1,000 Gifts is the name of the book. I've heard some people, usually women, it's written by a woman. That's one reason why I had a hard time reading sections of it. But it's written by this woman who decides that she's going to count 1,000 gifts in her life. I've heard some women say it was the best book they've ever read outside the Bible. What you need, if you want to increase your gratitude, think specifically, less generically, more specifically. It's when we start doing that we find out, even at the most heartbreaking time in our life, we are still blessed. Here's the way I say it. Blessed beyond measure, blessed beyond merit. I have blessings I don't deserve. I couldn't deserve in a million years. I have blessings that are, well, I can't count them all. Blessings beyond measure and beyond merit. Job did too. But Job was so crushed by what he experienced, it messed him up so bad that he was blinded to his blessings because of the heaviness of the burdens. It is always true. We are more blessed than we are burdened. Now, part of the problem with life is we become attached to things. Sometimes unwittingly, sometimes wittingly. Now, can anybody name the movie from that? With that picture, what's the name of the movie? Christmas Story. I lived about an hour south of Cleveland for half of my life. The house is in Cleveland, as a matter of fact. It's kind of like a museum. Really neat story. By the way, does anybody know the name of the boy whose tongue got stuck to that pole? If you do, I have a prize. Don't Google it. Don't you dare Google it if you have a phone. Okay. Flick. But you remember all those kids were around. He stuck his tongue out. His tongue got stuck to the pole. Then the fire department comes and the police come. Parents come. Things are in an uproar. Do you really think the kid intended to get his tongue stuck to the pole? Kids don't know enough to think like that. This was just a cool thing to do because it was the triple dog dare. And you don't let one of those go. Not if you're a boy. I've done so many stupid, in the past as a kid, I did so many stupid things. And a lot of times that's the motivation, that's all the motivation you need to do something really stupid, is somebody to double dog and then triple dog. That's way outside the line. I mean, you're just going to do it. We get attached to things. Now, here's what I want you to think about for a little bit. What do we become attached to in our life, either by choice or kind of unintentionally, unwittingly? Name me some things that we get attached to. They become valuable to us. Our family, okay? Our family. What? Pet. There are pet cemeteries now. I've not been asked to do a pet funeral yet. It's probably coming, though. But, okay, a pet. What else do we become attached to? Home. Things. Money. Work. Matthew 7, verse 21. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Your heart follows your treasures. Wherever your treasures are, that's where your heart is. Whatever you treasure or place value on. Inside of us, we assign value to things. People, things, we assign value to them. And they become important. We become attached to them. We love them, in the most generic sense. We become attached to them. And that's just the way we roll in this life. We become attached to stuff. When I was down in Florida last weekend, I was blessed to spend a little bit of time with a couple of grandchildren. One of them is my only grandson. He's a left-hander. He pitches. I catch for him. And I catch him with the glove that I used when I was a teenager. I still have that glove. It is probably my most precious, valuable, from a sentimental perspective, thing that I have in my life. As a matter of fact, the shoestring that I used when I was a teenager to tie the bottom part of the catcher's mitt is still on there. There are things that we become attached to for different reasons. Sometimes because there's a monetary value to them. Like a wedding ring. It's a ring, right? It's just a ring, right? There's a monetary value to that ring, isn't there? Is there a sentimental value? See, the sentimental value is off the charts. The tabulated monetary value, you can assess that. And you could even sell it. We become attached to things. Now, the problem with loving stuff or becoming attached to stuff is this. Inevitably, what's going to happen is we're going to lose something that really meant a lot to us. Take, for instance, home was mentioned. What is the big deal about somebody losing their home? Why is that? Because that's just that has a monetary value. You can assess the monetary value. You can look on Zillow and find the value of your home. If you were to, has anybody here lost their home by fire or storm of some sort? What would be the big deal about losing your home? Okay, you don't have a roof over your head. It's a loss of identity. Okay. Makes you more dependent. Okay. That's literally true, and emotionally, maybe even more so true. Yeah, that feeling of dependence. But lost your security. Okay. Okay. You're adrift. Okay. But it's only brick and mortar. It's only wood, drywall, shingles. But there's a value, isn't there? When you lose something of value, it has an effect on you. You know, if you look at that picture of that guy, if you have in your life experienced the loss of something valuable to you, you can probably very easily relate to that picture. As a matter of fact, you maybe can remember a time when that was you. It really does a number on you. It has a way of affecting your thinker and your feeler. It has a way of changing how you look at things. And it's a very difficult thing to deal with in your life. Because if what you lost was really, really assessed by your heart valuable, it'll mess you up really bad. To the point that it's not an uncommon thing for a person to say, "Am I going crazy?" It shakes you up there's physical symptoms that you can experience. It'll change your appearance, your countenance. It will really mess your thinking up because your feeler is in overdrive and your thinker is usually in park, or maybe even better described as neutral, because you can keep sliding backwards in neutral. And it really does have an effect on you. When my wife passed away, about 2 to 3 weeks after that, I was sitting in my home in the Canton, Ohio area, one cold January 2014 evening, in a house where nobody was there but me. And I experienced something I'd never experienced in my life before and never have since. I just blurted out without thinking. It just came out. What's wrong with me? I said that out loud. Why in the world would I say that out loud when there was nobody there? And it wasn't, it just came out. It just, you know how a kid has no filter? Hopefully Andrew's past that point. A kid has no filter between his brain and his lips. And stuff just comes out. And that's the way I was. You're not going crazy. You're grieving is what you're doing. I don't know how many times I've ran across people who've lost their spouses, who have questioned their sanity. I mean, really, seriously, questioned their sanity. They have really gotten concerned about themselves because they're so messed up because of the condition that they're in. But that is the human experience of grief. You know, we human beings, I'll tell you how old I am. I'll use this terminology. You are not a 350 cubic inch engine. I don't even know if they make those anymore now, that big. You're not that engine in a car. You're not that computer. You're not a lathe. You're a human being. We're not machines. Human beings have thinkers and feelers. And we live in this world where we become attached to stuff, to people and stuff. And when we lose them, we human beings, it's not like you can push a reset button. Things be okay. Hunky-dory again. Things are okay. No, you're not okay. But it's okay not to be okay sometimes. Because that's not a sign you're going crazy. It's not a sign that you have weak faith or no faith. What it's a sign of is you're human. And what you've got to struggle with is your humanness. What did Jesus say in the garden? Even when the spirit is willing, what did he say? The flesh is weak. And boy, sometimes it's very humbling to experientially learn how weak your flesh is. Sometimes we're not the people we think we are. And we find out a lot about ourselves during these very turbulent, heart-crushing experiences we have in our life. Now, let me tell you about Miss Carolyn. Miss Carolyn was a member of the Hartville, Ohio church all the time I was there until her death. The day she was given her very bleak diagnosis, I was with her and some of her family members. We were right there in the room when the doctor told her. And so sad. Miss Carolyn was, along with one of her daughters, they were the only two consistently faithful Christians in that family. She was married to a man who was not alcoholic and had been an alcoholic. He'd become a Christian when he was a teenager. He'd been an alcoholic for the vast majority of his life. She was faithful, though. She was faithful to him. She was faithful to the church. And he was an unfaithful Christian when she was diagnosed. It was a very, very cold January day, and it was snowing that day in the Belden Village area of Canton. And when she got that diagnosis, and the doctor talked to us for a little bit, I asked the doctor for permission for us to stay there and talk about this a little bit after he left and spend some time in prayer, and he granted us permission. So we did that. After that discussion and after that time of prayer, we walked out. She took care of things at the desk, and we just stepped outside. And because it was cold and it was snowy, her husband, Lowell was his name, said, I'll go out and get the truck and I'll pull it up to the door. Now remember who he is. Remember about his life struggle and his spiritual condition. So he's going out to the truck. When he was out there getting his truck, here's what Miss Carolyn said. She said, well, maybe, just maybe, this will bring Lowell back to the Lord. She had just come face to face with the fact she'd lost her health. And yet 30 minutes later, she had that perspective. You talk about inspiration. I don't think I would have reacted that way. I can't imagine me reacting that way. I'd be bawling my eyes out for a few weeks before I finally came to my senses. She thought about some way that maybe this could be for the glory of God. But she suffered a tremendous loss. I was in a physician's office in Jackson, Tennessee one day. My physician's assistant was a member of the church, and I decided one morning, before he came into the little room where we met, I decided to address him first before he addressed me. And I said, hey, Brent, I said, as soon as he walked in, instead of saying hello or anything like that, I said, Brent, when do people appreciate their health? He said without hesitation, when they lose it. Isn't that sad? That's the human frailty. Does it take the loss of your health to appreciate your health? It shouldn't. It shouldn't. But sometimes it does. Isn't that sad that it would take a loss for us to grow in our gratitude? That's sad. That's a pretty sad commentary on us. What we can do in our life is we can do what Miss Carolyn and her family did. Struggle with that. The loss in your life. If you take a look at this graphic, see you've got this change. In her case, or in anybody's case, this was a forced change. Some of the changes in your life you choose. You choose to move, for instance. You choose to get another job. There's a lot of things you choose to retire. Those are all chosen transitions. There are also in life forced transitions, forced changes. Nobody would choose to lose their spouse. Nobody would choose to lose their child. There aren't too many people who would choose to lose their job and be unemployed. You don't choose to lose your health. There are choices in life that are just forced on you. And what you've got to do is you've got to deal with it. Some way, somehow, you've got to deal with it. Now, some people die. Some people just exist from that point on. They don't really live any sort of a meaningful life. They just die when they've lost something. That's not a wise choice. There's life after loss. That life after loss, though, involves dealing with change. Now, what you want to do with your changes in life, whether they're chosen or forced on you, what you want to do is eventually you want to get to a new beginning. But you can't do that just like that. It's not like turning the page in a book or pushing a reset button on a laptop. What you've got to do to get to your new beginning, your new normal in your life, is you've got to go in this wooded area, this forest. Let me tell you about this forest. It's weird. It's really weird. One of the things that's weird about this forest is there's no evidence of anybody having been there. I mean, in the sense that you don't see anybody. You don't hear anybody. It's like you're in the forest all by yourself. What's really weird about it, though, is you do see some evidence because you see footprints. But they don't go anywhere. They don't lead anywhere. It's just a footprint here, a footprint there. There's no pathway. You've got to get through the forest to get to your new beginning. You've got to experience things by choice and hopefully some by providence that are therapeutic, that eventually get you to a new beginning. It's kind of like, you remember Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz? You know, there were some really neat experiences in that movie, weren't there, for her? She met some great people. She had some really wonderful, kind people. Did she have any scary experiences? You know, it was only recently that my youngest daughter has permitted her children to watch that movie, because there are some really scary parts in that movie. Now, back when I was a kid, your parents didn't care about it. You just had to suck it up and live with it and not sleep that night after you saw the movie. But that's the way it is in this forest area. There are some people, after your change, they're going to be really wonderful. They're going to be kind, sweet, such a blessing. There are also going to be some people, and you're going to have some experiences, they're going to be maddening. You're going to get angry about, frustrated. You're going to struggle with. You want to get to the other side. You want to get to the new beginning. But there's no path cut out for you. And the footsteps don't lead anywhere. It's so frustrating. You want to get there, but you're not there. But you really want to, but you can't get there just because you want to. You got to, over time, invest in the right kind of efforts that are constructive. It's grief work is what it's called. You got to involve yourself in effective grief work to get to that new beginning. For most people, it takes years. Literally, it takes years for most people. Let me show you another graphic. It's called the neutral zone. William Bridges is his name. He wrote a book about this very subject. And he described this forest period as the neutral zone. What we have to realize is that after we've experienced a traumatic loss in our life of anything of great value, that we are really going to struggle. And it's okay if you are not yourself. Because how could you be? If it was really, really important to you and you lost it, it's going to mess you up. And you're going to be messed up for a while. And you don't have to apologize for that. What do we often do if we're really struggling with a difficult time in our life and we're in the presence of somebody else and we start tearing up or crying? What do we say? I'm sorry. What do you have to apologize for? Absolutely nothing. You have earned, by virtue of your loss, you have earned the right to cry anytime you want to, in public or private, including the church building. As a matter of fact, doing that can be it's not only therapeutic to you as an individual, it's also very educational for other people who see you struggling. Let's be honest about who we are and our needs. We don't have it all together. We all have a ways to go. We're a mess. And what we are as human beings is we're a mass of a mess. The quicker we learn that, the better we're going to be at being transparent about our own needs and better educated about the needs of other people, to be able to minister to them in an effective way. So here's what you ought to do. Get the help you need. I call this the Hobby Lobby verse in the Bible. It's the last verse in this chapter of the book of Isaiah. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. What's going to happen? They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not be faint. I hope we have time in the next session. We're going to take a break here in just a couple minutes. I hope in the next session we have enough time to look at the verses previous to that. It's a shame we isolate that verse and put it on a piece of home interior without the context of that verse. Man, there are some powerful statements made prior to that verse. You know what you need most when you're suffering loss? You need the Lord. That's what you need. And one of the best things we can do for people who are grieving is help them to have a closer walk with the Lord. No matter where they are at that point in their life, help them to get closer to the Lord, because that's the strength that they need. Because all we have is the weakness of the flesh. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. What a beautiful, humble admission of need and a great recognition of who's going to be the best help. So here is what we ought to do. Don't waste your pain. Miss Carolyn, when she was diagnosed, and it was terminal, she wanted her loss to be her husband's eternal gain. The end of the story, by the way, is he did come back to the Lord. She got her wish. He came back to the Lord. That's a hard struggle for an alcoholic. He came back to the Lord. Don't waste your pain. You can relate to people a whole lot better and more effectively after loss than you ever could before your loss. Don't waste your pain, the pain of your loss. We're going to take a break for a little bit. What we'll do is we'll have Andrew start singing to us, and that'll be our call to get back in here. Andrew, what kind of repertoire do you have? Do you have a lot of songs you can sing? No. Oh, no. Okay. Well, maybe I'll have to sing. I Can't Smile Without You, Barry Manilow. I love that song. And I want to